What's the most calculated thing you've ever seen an animal do? My name's Ryan from Askreddit Tells, and today we're going to be looking at that. But before we do, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel. I made a crow friend while smoking on the porch. I gave it fragments of whatever food I could find on the way out. One day I found an empty pack of marb on the porch. Puzzled, but I threw it away. A few days later, I found my crow bro standing behind 3 empty packs of cigarettes. I tried to pick them to throw away, but the crow bro was protecting them for some reason. Frustrated, but I gave it a small chunk of meat as I took another drag. As I gave it the meat, the crow picked it up, one of the packs, and replaced it in front of me. Then it hit me. The crow was trading with me. The trade went on for a few more times until the winter hit Minnesota. Too long didn't read? A crow traded me cigarette packaging for food with me. What's more amazing to me is that it tried to appeal to your end of the bargain with something that you might want. The crow always saw you when you were smoking. It knew that cigarettes came from cigarette packs and it brought you the empty packs. The crow just didn't figure out what bartering, it figured out how to do the advertising as well. I like to imagine that the crow saw the human taking out these sticks and painstakingly burning them and slowly, and thought, damn, I can empty those out way faster. This human's going to give me so much food when I bring him the empty boxes. In Chatham, Ontario, crows began using the town as a sort of rest stop along their migration route. The end result was hundreds of thousands of birds taking refuge in the city. And because Chatham is a farming community and crows tend to ruin crops, you can imagine that there were problems. It got so bad that the mayor declared war on them, hopefully by screaming those exact words into the air before hefting an axe and charging at their nests. Before the townspeople set out, hoping to bag at least 300,000 of the 600,000 birds currently ruining their livelihood. Unfortunately for Chatham, word spread fast in crow communities the first day after the announcement was made. Hunters went out and shot a crow. One, and it may have not even been a real crow. The rest flew off and presumably in a dark room lit by a single ceiling lamp began to spread word about the incident. After that, the Chatham crows always made sure to fly high enough above settled areas to avoid getting hit with a birdshot. No more were killed that year at all. 1 crow dead out of more than 500,000. They'll be back any minute now. That's the end result of an entire human city setting out in organized fashion to exterminate some crows. We don't have the statistics on this, but just playing the odds, we're pretty sure more humans than that died in the hunt, or else just choking on a taco after being startled by a crow. This behavior is not isolated to Chatham. Either crows have been known to change their entire migration pattern to avoid farms where even a single crow has been killed in the past. Generations upon generations later, they still remember specific houses where only one measly bird has died. Sure, they're only avoiding those houses for now, those houses that they remember, those houses that they know have taken out one of their own. But there's just something deeply unsettling about the possibility that there are millions of crows out there right now that know your address. I used to find dead mice in my dog's water bowl. I couldn't figure out why these stupid mice kept drowning themselves. Then one day I was watching my dog stalking a mouse on the back porch. She caught it in her teeth and brought it to the water bowl and held it under the water with her teeth until it drowned. Walked away like it was nothing. Scariest thing I've ever seen. A few years ago, there were a few slices of bread in the middle of the street for whatever reason. A crow kept flying down and treating themselves, but whenever they did, one of the neighborhood dogs came and chased them off. The crow tried about 3 times to eat in peace, but the dog chased it off every time. So the crow then decided to land a little bit away from the slices of bread and the dog ran towards it. The crow then flew off and landed about a meter away from where it just landed. The dog followed again. The crow repeated this until the dog was in a different street, and then the crow came back and chowed down. Just up the street from my apartment in San Francisco, there was one of these fast food restaurants that was either a KFC or a Taco Bell depending on the angle from which it was viewed. The establishment was a frequent stopping point for students coming from the nearby college, and those students were a frequent target for a remarkably bright crow. Now, on most days, the bird in question would just hang around the restaurant, as well as other ones, and scavenge for scraps. Every once in a while, though, I saw this happen twice, and it happened to me once. It would enact a much more complex scheme than simply going through the gutter. The crow had apparently discovered that money could be exchanged for food, so it would wait until it saw a likely mark, squawk at them to get their attention, then pick up and drop a coin. Anyone who responded would witness the bird hopping a few feet away, then following its victim towards the source of its next snack. When the crow approached me, it dropped a nickel on the ground. I stooped, picked up the coin, and then jumped slightly when the bird made a noise that sounded not unlike taco. Needless to say, I bought that crow a taco. The final out-of-pocket cost for me, minus the nickel, was something like $1.15. Even so, I figured a bird that smart deserved a reward simply for existing. Of course, that was probably exactly what I was supposed to think. Too long didn't read. A crow paid me 5 cents to buy it a taco. We once came home to find my dog had ripped into a multi-pack of mini chocolate bars and sweets and gone to town on them. However, we couldn't bring ourselves to tell him off because he'd also placed an unopened chocolate on my bed, my sister's bed, and my parents' bed. I guess he thought if he shared the chocolate with us all, he wouldn't be mad. I was once walking from my grandparents' house to the shops and accidentally went the very long way, which happened to go past a creek. There may have been more water, I couldn't see, and the park where the ducks like to live. I saw 2 ducks walk towards the road, and at the edge, one duck puts its wing in front of the other of the duck to stop it. It looked both ways and waited for a car to pass, walked to the center line of the road with the other duck, and repeated. I have never regretted not bringing my camera more. Your story reminded me. On one edge of my neighborhood, there's a large retention pond/lake thing. I've lived there for about a decade, so from my perspective, there has always been a small group of geese who live along the shore or in the park somewhere. There have always been people living across in the residential street from the pond who feed the geese. Don't get me started. So these geese have been crossing the road for years, and people have been almost running these geese over for years. The road is a main thoroughfare in and out of the neighborhood and can get pretty busy. So a few years ago, a stop sign with a crosswalk and then an extra crosswalk down the road were put in. Nothing fancy, just signs and paint on the road. The geese started using the crosswalks. Since they were installed, I haven't seen them cross anywhere but within 10 feet of the markings on the pavement. My dog once outsmarted me. He tricked me into getting up to let him out on a cold winter morning. Only as soon as I turned the corner, he jumped up into my warm spot in the bed, curled up tight, and then studiously ignored me when I came back into the room. That butthead. Best dog ever. I had a large, lovable Great Dane, about 140 pounds. One day, my husband, my sister-in-law, and I were sitting on the living room watching my 3-year-old niece play with the dog on the floor. At one point, my niece grabbed the dog's stuffed toy and walked away with it. The dog got up and followed her to where she stood in the corner. So my niece is standing in the corner and playing with the toy and facing the wall, and my large dog is looming behind her, looking over her shoulder at the toy in her hands. The dog turns back and looks at us grown-ups on the couch, then looks back at the toy, then looks back at us, then back at the toy. Finally, he turned his head and staring at us, lifted his giant dog foot and punched my niece's head into the wall in front of her. She immediately exploded into tears and dropped the toy. She stood there sobbing and holding her forehead. The dog calmly and very daintily picked up the toy and took it to his bed and laid down. Edit. Since you all seem to think Spartacus wasn't as endearing as I did, here's some photos. My horse knows how to unlock gates with his nose. Most of the stalls have a slide lock that they usually just leave alone. Not Rex. We had to put a bottom lock on the door he couldn't reach. One day, one of the newer people locked him in his stall but forgot the bottom latch, then walked away. Rex unlocked his door and then went to the other stalls and let the other horses out. Then he led them on a charge to grassy freedom. My horse did this for the first time in the middle of the night on night. He tried to cross the highway to see the neighbor horses and got hit by a truck and died. That was a sad night for 11-year-old me. I once watched a pigeon jaywalk. It never once tried to fly, it just walked to the edge of the curb, looked both ways for cars, and then started walking. Got to the yellow line on the road and stopped again. It waited while a few cars went by and then looked both ways again and continued walking across to the other curb. It was fascinating. It must have learned by watching other people do it. Edit. R.I.P. Inbox. There was a flock of little birds outside of a French bakery in California. They would pick at the bits of scones and croissants people threw away in the trash cans nearby, and many of them would approach people for scraps. We noticed one particular bird hopping around on one leg begging for scraps, and we gave it a little bit of our bread. As soon as it had the bit of food in its beak, I swear to God it looked right at me and dropped its other leg to the ground. Lots of birds will retract one leg while idling on the ground. It flexes one leg and rests another tired leg. I doubt he was faking being disabled in order to gift you. That is pretty smart. Edit. Yeah, I'm aware that birds can display wounded behavior. They may learn to engage in the behavior more through conditioning. Hey, when I stand on one leg, the humans feed me more. Someone else suggested that it might be drawing on this behavior that killdeer birds display, in which a parent with a nest will mime an injury in order to distract predators that are getting close to the nest. This would make no sense since the chance that OP's bird was a killdeer bird is very small. But regardless, my post is about theory of mind. I was trying to explain that it's unlikely that the bird was intentionally pandering to the original poster. The bird may have been pretending to be wounded, or engaging in behavior identical to that which would make it look wounded. That doesn't mean that the bird understands why appearing wounded is useful. This was my dog. I was eating a bagel on the couch and he was sitting on the floor next to me, just eyeing me down. You could tell he wanted some, but I wasn't giving in to his cute persuasions. He calmly walks over to the mudroom door and rings his bell that lets us know he has to go to the bathroom. So I get off the couch, put my bagel on the coffee table, and walk to the mudroom. Well, between the time I got up and walked to the mudroom door, he ran around, back through the kitchen, and had snagged my bagel off the table. I didn't even try to get it back from him. The slick bastard deserved his prize. I realized who was the smartest being in the house that day. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have for today. Did you like this video? If you did, make sure to check out some of our other stuff and maybe even subscribe. As always, my name's Ryan from Askreddit Tells, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.